Welcome back to the channel, T Hill times two. In this video, I'm going to talk about some voting purge laws that were enacted in Texas. I know we're a little bit late because that's just how we are as a people. If you're not actively involved in politics, you won't uh, know what's actually going on until actually it's been done. So you start to think about the things that really affect you or the people around you, and now you're trying to undo something that it actually took a long time to get done and you wasn't thinking about it. So in this video, I'm going to talk about those Texas voter purge laws and anything else that anybody else want to talk about. Those things will be discussed here today. Um, so I got a little presentation here that I think helps a little bit. It talks about Texas and a little bit about some of the voting right acts of 1865. So you can think about how all that kind of started and what it means today. And me personally, I think that people got it wrong years ago, and if they didn't, we wouldn't have this problem that we have now. And not to say that it was wrong, but it was definitely needed back then, and we need to have a lot of laws changed, but they doing this again and again and again because they don't get their way. And then I'm talking about both sides. Mhm. So good morning, good morning. And I'm doing this early in the morning because it's really nobody up, or if it is, you're probably trying to get down the road. And I wanted to have this conversation to help people kind of just think about some things getting down the road, and maybe you can chime in when you want to, or get a chance. You can put it in the comment section. But it made me think about what our ancestors went through when they were given the right to vote. And then you start to think about what it was before they could vote. They wanted to have a say. They couldn't say anything. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't go where they wanted to go. They couldn't like who they wanted to like. And these were people. And I think anytime you have an election coming up, there's always a point that who's ever running for that position is going to point to people, and the majority of us, you want to belong, you want to be a part of a majority, and it's sad that we have to revert back to all those years of not being called a person. And I think anybody in this country is a person, and they should have the right to vote. They should have the right to pick and choose who they want. And it shouldn't be about money. It shouldn't be about, oh, you got to have money to do this or money to do that. But that's what this voter purge is kind of doing, because number one, you got to have an ID to go vote, and we all know that you you got to get an up to date ID, right? You have to get an ID that lets them know who you really are, and that costs. And they don't give it to you right away. It has to be mailed to you, right? So let's just say, for instance, you were a homeless person and you lived at 123 Broadway Street underneath the bridge down there, right? And I know people are going to say, homeless people this, homeless people that, but they're people. So it doesn't matter if they're homeless, they're people and they have the right to vote. They have the right to say whatever they want to say. Um, they have the same rights as anybody else here. They just choose to be homeless, right? They just choose to do that. That's what they want to do. They don't want to get a job and go work. They don't want to do that. They want to live their life peacefully doing what they do. All right. They're not breaking the law. They're not doing anything wrong. They're doing what they need to do for what they want to do. So a person that lives under the bridge has an address of 123 Broadway Street, right? And if they sign up to vote and register, that's their address. So if you had to do an examination on their voting status, you would have to send a notice to that address for them to get. And what is the likelihood a mailman is going to go there and look and say it's a homeless camp here? I'm sending this back because they don't have a mailbox. Hmm. That right there is going to disenfranchise the homeless people. And so when we talk about those things that disenfranchise homeless people or anybody, it should be illegal. You should be able to vote. And you see that here from the voting rights of 1965. And it was enacted or signed into law by Lyndon Johnson. And it's supposed to basically back up or put some teeth to the 15th Amendment that prohibit blacks from voting. And we want to have that conversation this morning about these things that we continuously see over and over and over again. And I think people got to stand up for themselves and say something or be involved in the process. Because if you're not doing that, it's going to revert back to what it used to be. And that, quite frankly, shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen at all. So, Greg Abbott's um, signing that voter purge in the law. He apparently, from the research that I seen, the Democrats delayed it like 3 times since 2020. Right? They did some stopping measures that people in the House do. They don't show up. They go and do other things. So you can't hold a quorum. If y'all don't know what that is, you can't hold a meeting. And all that does is just delay them from voting on something and actually passing it. But it gave them time to talk about it, to see what other things they can do. And apparently they couldn't do enough because they didn't have enough votes. So it passed, and the governor did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said, "Hey, if this thing comes to me, I'm gonna vote it. I'm gonna sign it into law." I don't agree with it, but what am I? I'm not a politician, but I'm somebody that understands. I understand that it shouldn't have never went that far, right? It should have never went that far because of the 15th Amendment, right? The 15th Amendment states here it prohibits the federal government and each state from denying or abiding a citizen's rights to vote, right? That's what the 15th Amendment says, right? You're a citizen. It doesn't say anything about you're not a citizen, but you're a citizen, right? Especially on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, right? Or previous condition of servitude. So I'm believing that to be you were locked up and you're not locked up, you get the right to vote. But in Texas, they hand you a form. If they can't find your name, they hand you a form and they say, fill this out. We don't see your name on the voter roll, but you fill this out and it's called a provisional ballot. Right? We don't know what's going on. We don't know why your name isn't on here. It could be a host of things, and they're supposed to ask you a whole bunch of questions to try to find your name. All right. And they have these classes that you have to go to before you work at the poll because you need to know those things. Because if you don't, you'll be disenfranchising a person coming to vote. So those things you need to know, right? You just don't go there just to just be there. You need to actually do a job. It's a job and they pay you for it. It might not be a lot of money to some people, but they pay you for your job. And that's just another thing that you need to do whenever you're working for the people. You got to actually work. So in Governor Abbott's case, he's doing what he said he wanted to do because he's running for office again. And so when he's talking to his constituents or the people that's going to vote for him, he's telling them what he will do. So that's what he's doing. Do I think it's fair? No, I don't. I think that it's not fair. It should have went to the Supreme Court. They should have said, "Look, this is what this means. This is what it is. You can't do this because you're disenfranchising people, not just one side or the other. You're disenfranchising people, and those people should not be disenfranchised. They should have the right to vote. All people." But we understand. We understand that people want their way. They want things done their way. They want shortcuts. They don't want the long term. They want shortcuts. And they're going to do whatever they need to do to get straight to it. But in this case, that's what it took. It took it took 3 times for this bill to pass. Right? And it says here over 6,500 non-citizens were removed from the voting rolls. Right? Over 6,000 voters who have a felony conviction were removed. Right? Over 457,000 deceased people were removed. Over 463,000 voters on a suspension list. Now, I never heard of a suspension list until I looked it up in Texas, but it's basically a list of people who don't respond back to those notices. right? So if they do a random audit and send you a notice to the address and you're no longer living there and you didn't change your registration, they remove you. They remove you off the the voter roll. And then when you go to vote, they can't find your name. So they make a provisional ballot for you, right? They ask you all these questions to try to find your name. And when they can't find your name, they give you a basically a ballot that they check on later to see were you really uh, eligible to vote. And if you're not, it ends there. They don't count your vote. But if you are, they're supposed to count your vote. So these are things that people need to be aware of and understand how their voting is done. If you live in Texas, you should be checking right now to make sure you are registered to vote in this up and coming election. If you live anywhere in the United States, you should be checking to make sure you're eligible to vote because this just doesn't happen in Texas. This happens in a lot of states. And here's another one: over 134,000 voters who responded to an address confirmation notice that they have moved, right? So they would send those things out, these notices of address change, and you fill it out and say, "Hey, I moved. I don't live there no more." So okay, they take your name out, right? Over 65,000 voters who failed to respond to a notice of an examination. So if they send you a notice to basically check and see if you are who you say you are and you don't respond, they remove you, right? They remove you. And we've had instances of people working long hours at the post office throwing mail away, right? People don't want to work. So they take your mail and then they throw it in the woods or they put it in a dumpster. So when you don't receive something, they say, "Hey, they never responded back, so we're going to take their name out." This is why it's very important for you to go and check and see if you're able to make sure you're still registered. It says over 19,000 voters who requested to cancel their resignation. So there's people that's out there that says, "Hey, I'm moving. Here's my request to cancel. I don't want to live here no more. I want to live somewhere else. I want to move to another state, but this is my letter to you guys letting you know that I'm canceling my registration." And I'm trying to understand and figure out why the information to fact check this wasn't put out, right? These groups, they went to court over this. And so it never came out in discovery where this information should have been. Or maybe it's out, we just failing to realize it and ask for it. But the information of all these people being disenfranchised, that should have stopped this court case. They went back in and they did something for the disabled because the disabled people, They can't get up and move like a regular person could. So they have to have time, or they might have to have somebody go to the poll for them and vote for them. So those are just a few things that I wanted to talk about this morning and see if, you know, what do you think? What do you think we go as a people? And I always thought about that is we're going to all these other countries trying to spread democracy, and we don't even have it figured out here. We're going to somebody else's country to try to make our dollar work over there, and we don't have it figured out here. We're all trying to get rich here. We're all trying to get out of a situation here. We're trying to do things that we need to do for ourselves and our family. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Yep. We keep doing it. And quite frankly, I just want to say, hey, you know, when are we going to stop chasing our tail over and over and over again on the same stuff? The same thing. So this is just something that you need to think about. If you're out here and you're ready to go vote, it's just something we ought to think about. Hold on.
What's up, man?
What's up? What's up?
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was just talking to your uncle, man.
Yeah.
hmm So what we talking? Politics sounds like
Yeah, it's a little
Texas
bit.
purging votes. Where were you at in your conversation? I want to jump in where you at. Where you at with it?
I was done. I made a little presentation and I
Oh,
talked
okay.
about it. That it's just stuff that we're just doing over and over again from the 15th Amendment to now, where you disenfranchising people, you know,
hmm
and all these states are just following suit. One state did it, the next state doing it, and it's not being stopped by the Supreme Court. You know,
Uh-huh.
and I just, to me, I just think that it's wasting our time when we have people in place to supposed to stop this stuff, and they just got us doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Well, it's a it's an old saying, man, about particularly when it comes to like politics and stuff like that and rights. Your rights, right? Particularly as blacks. As hard as it was for blacks to obtain rights, they said it's going to be even harder to keep them.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That was said a long time ago. I can't remember who said that. But and it's always it's going to be a constant fight. I used to hear Joe Madison talk about this all the time. Like this, you will be fighting this to your death, your kids, grandkids, so forth and so on, man. That's just what it is. That's just the system, man.
Right.
hmm So it's not something that you just going to go vote on and then walk away. No, no, no. Voting, it's an active sport. Like you got to be constantly doing this. Like it ain't just a one and done. It ain't just a matter of going to the ballots, selecting your candidate, and walk away, and everything is good. And that's actually the beginning of it when you go do that. Then you got to, it gets very difficult, man, because it's time consuming. We talk about this kind of stuff, when we're
Right.
going through our everyday lives, trying to put bread on the table and trying to stay, astute on what's going on in politics. But politics is constantly changing, constantly evolving. And if you ain't in it, you're going to miss out. You don't know what the hell's going on. Laws are constantly being crafted in everybody's state, man. It's just a little bit at a time, man. And sometimes it's so minute, you don't even realize it's being changed. They constantly changing voting laws. I don't know why we got to continue to keep doing. I mean, I know why. You know what I mean? It's basically rooted in racism. And I'm just be quite honest with you, because if it wasn't, then we wouldn't have to be constantly fighting for the same goddamn thing you've been fighting for forever. You know what I'm saying? The same thing your grandfather, your grandfather fought for. You know what I mean? We're doing it in 2024. For people just a right to vote. You know, so they put all these loopholes in place and make it very difficult for that to happen. That's all this is, man. It's like they used to call it a poll tax. You know what I mean? They just put all these things. You used to have to count how many jelly beans in a jar. You know what I mean? To be able to vote.
The literacy test, right?
You know, how many, literacy, how many bubbles in a soap bar. Like, this shit was just crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. And all this is just high tech that today. Yeah. It's just the same
they're
thing.
just doing it over and over again.
That's it. So it's constantly, like I said, we've been doing this since the beginning of time, man. It's just the beginning of our time here. Well, particularly just blacks in general, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Because they're trying to constantly disenfranchise that vote, man. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's for a reason, because if you hear a lot of people, oh, voting don't matter, I'll be goddamn. Nobody invests this kind of energy, time, resources for people not to be able to vote to tell you it don't matter. Like, that don't make sense.
Right. It don't. It do matter.
Hey, you damn right it do. If it didn't
And
matter,
they see how close it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it had. And that's when it gets more sinister as the closer it gets. When this stuff gets tight, these particular races get tight, like this upcoming election term here, you're going to see all kinds of craziness going on, man. And it's getting more extreme too, to be quite honest with you.
Right. Like I said, you got to be involved. You can't.
You got to be involved. Yeah, you got to know what's going on out here. You
know
have to know local on your local level.
Yeah.
Because by the time it gets to the president, all the president does is what he going to do. He's just going to sign the bill that was crafted all the way down in your local legislature. That's where it was crafted at, all the way down there, where you actually had to say so. Because by the time it gets all crafted up and get pushed to that president's desk, you're too late. Because he's either going to sign it or not sign it at that point.
Right.
Shape World. What's up, Shape World? She said, am I up this late? What do you mean up this late? These are my hours. These are my hours. Gee, I'm a night rider.
Right.
This is where the money is made at in trucking. But I don't want to get sidetracked. You know.
I don't want to talk about trucking.
Yeah, I want to
talk about trucking.
So let's get back. We're done. I'm done. I apologize, man. I apologize.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to talk about that.
But so like I said, I didn't catch your presentation. I was dealing with your uncle there, but I know it was you're talking about purging. I know we talked about that yesterday a little bit. You know, and this happens in everybody's state, to be quite honest with you.
Right. I said I'm from Ohio, and it happened in my state. You know, but we were talking about the article, because the article came out, and it made front page news about the governor down there doing that. And I be taking issue with stuff like that, but I'm not from there. But I take issue with just people. I want to see the best in people, and I took issue with that because I'm not taking issue with him. I'm taking issue with the media at some point, because Houston was without power for weeks, right? And Abbott was out of the country. And
on what capacity? Like, what was he doing? Was he on business? Vacation? I don't know.
Yeah, he was on business, but but how are we gonna fact check that? We don't know what he was doing over there.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You know what I mean? But he wasn't here.
I got bigger fish to fry right here in the state of in the Keystone State. You know, the state of Pennsylvania. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We got shenanigans going on here. You know what I'm saying?
And that's the thing is,
and there's no way I can keep up what's going on in Texas when I'm trying to keep up with what's going on in my state.
Exactly. But you know, when they hit the news with it, and it's somebody working at they're trying to keep their job, so they got to report what they report so they can keep relevant and not really think about the people. The people were dying down there. It's hot as hell, and they ain't saying nothing about the. I ain't seen nothing on YouTube about, you know, helping them old people out. None of that. And I'm like, what's going on? Why these people not making videos about going down there to help them? You know, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, but they want to make a video about voting purge and go viral on the front page news about it, and it's too late. He been signed that thing in the law back in 21.
That was already. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it
about
made it
about being able to purge the votes.
Right. He put it in. He signed it back in 21. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did my research and looked it up, they apparently they have a law that says you can't remove anybody within 90 days of the
election.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So within 90 days of an election, you're not supposed to be purging anybody.
Gotcha.
Right. So they've already, when I read the numbers off, they already removed over 1.1 million people.
That's a lot of voters.
That's a lot.
That's being disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And what's the reason for the purge? And what are they saying?
To make he said to stop illegal voting, people from illegally voting.
So when they purge you, what's the reason they giving you for purging you per se?
Let me put it back up here. It was these are the reasons. It's not being a non-citizen.
Okay.
Having a felony conviction.
Hold on. Let's try to do this one at a time. So the first one is what? Not being a citizen, right?
Not being a citizen.
Yeah. So how are they even on the rolls, right? Citizens shouldn't even. I don't even know how they even get registered to vote, but you know what I mean. If you're not a citizen, because you have to show citizenship to even, be registered to vote. Right, exactly. So
right.
I'm confused with that one.
But that was only 6,500 people were non-citizens that they got rid of. Over 6,500 people.
Okay. Right. What was the next one?
The next one was voters who have a felony conviction.
All right. And what's the law on that in that state? Because I don't know.
I don't know either, because I'm not from there.
Right.
But my stance on it was, it shouldn't matter if you have a felony or not. You should be allowed to vote. Because
I agree with that.
Because the reason why is because the 15th Amendment says right here is that it basically allows you with previous condition of servitude, right? It says on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, right? So you're a convicted felon, right? You should still be able to vote because it says it here in the 15th Amendment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But somebody's going to say it doesn't say you can't be a felon. It says previous servitude.
Yeah.
So you got to understand what that word means.
But that could also kind of be like a contradiction, right, with the 14th Amendment. If you can pull that up, you know what I mean?
Right. But I was just talking about the Voting Right Act of 1965. It had that's why that came out, is to give the 15th Amendment some more teeth. because they wasn't following the amendment, so they had to come out with another law to make people follow the amendment. Which so now you see what we're dealing with when we're talking about creating a law to make people follow, and people say, "Man, I ain't following that law."
I ain't following. Yeah, it
I don't care.
happens
I
every
don't
day,
care
don't
what they say.
it?
It happens every day, right? People
Every
don't
day,
stop at
man.
a red light and still go through the light and smack into you and say, "Oh man, my bad."
When people don't like certain laws, they just don't pay attention. They don't abide by them. They just keep it moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. People do not follow laws when it's not convenient for them. They don't
Yeah,
care.
when they don't like it. Yeah, when they don't
Right.
like it, then they don't follow it. Yeah.
Mhm. So
So what do you do with that? That's a whole nother
right,
issue.
right. And you can do. You just oh man. And so they made it a felony to get caught up in that.
Hmm.
Oh, we got another guest coming in. You can turn your camera down. There you go.
Morning, fellas.
Good
Morning.
morning. Good morning.
Wow, look at
Yeah.
that. Oh, old man came in.
Mhm.
I heard you. I was listening to your
Hmm.
conversation though. I was trying to get
Did,
ready and I actually
did-
walked
did
out
I
and
say
realized I
anything?
forgot
Did I
something.
say anything wild or off the beaten path of how I thought about this
No,
whole thing?
no. I
Okay.
mean you broke it down and I think the major part of it is, listen, there's nothing new under the sun, right? And everything that you said has been regurgitated, repackaged, and you said before, but people just aren't listening. And I think one of the ways for us to avoid these situations, because these states do this every year. Of course, during the presidential election, more people involved, so more people are purged. There's just nothing new under the sun. But I think the way that we can avoid this, especially our people and people in general, but specifically us, is to be involved every time. If there's an election in your local city, vote. Like I said, I don't care if it's for alderman, vote. If it's your city has elections for sheriff, vote. The only way that you can keep that
I think he's saying keep your
constantly
status.
over.
You're cutting in and out.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
ooh, yeah,
Force
yeah,
regen there.
Yeah.
yeah.
But the only way we can keep our status is that what you're saying? Status as a registered voter is to vote. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, of course, but it's
Mhm.
more so being involved. Like I said, there's always all elections, right? Every
Mhm.
year there's an election where someone lives at. At least I can speak on my state. There's an election every year for something. But when you only wait till the big election, the presidential election, then you run into these cases where, okay, well, you haven't voted in 4 years.
Right.
And
Now you're
some of
supposed to
these
come out
states
every
are
2 years and check you, right?
correct. That is correct.
Mhm.
So every time there's an election, at least on my behalf, every time there's an election, I get all kinds of things sent to my phone. Um, I'm a registered voter in the state of Connecticut. I was a registered voter in the state of Georgia years ago. And even now, because my number's been the same over 20 years, I still get text messages about what's going on in Georgia. I'm
Right.
still in the system. Okay, well, let's see if he's still registered. And I would have to contact, say, hey, listen, I don't live there. I live here. Everything's done up here. But the point of it is I'm constantly staying involved. So they're not going to be able to just purge my vote as easy because I'm always voting on something, at least here in the city of Meriden. So therefore, I'm not going to wake up one day and go to the polls and find out, oh, I'm no longer in the system. And now I have to
Well,
ask for,
you hope.
mhm.
You
Yeah,
hope
I
you
hope.
don't.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
hope
I hope.
because
And,
nobody
and,
knows if they've been
Well,
purged or not. Go ahead.
let me let me say this, right? And this got to do with purging, right? And in the state of Pennsylvania, right, we didn't have this mail-in ballot all the time, right? That's kind of fairly new here. I think since like COVID or whatever. they allowed us to do that. They just kept it intact for us to do that. And I've been doing it. And the reason why I like doing it is because when I do my mail-in ballot, the number one reason why I do it is to piss people off that don't want me to be able to do that. That's the number one reason why I do it. But anyway, when I do that, I actually get an email confirmation when they get it to say that they received it.
Right.
When
So
you go
if
to the
you never
when you go
got
to the
that,
poll, yeah, go ahead.
if you never got that, what would be your next form of action then?
To go check to make sure that I'm still I'm still registered.
Right. So would you go vote then again, or would you let them know that you voted and you turned it in? So I'm trying to get a little deep here, and I know it's for people
Hmm.
that's listening,
Yeah,
because
I would
here you
let them.
can't vote
Yeah,
twice.
yeah. Nowhere you can vote twice. That's illegal.
Right. That's
Yeah.
illegal. So you would have to go there and you would have to get some type of uh, notice from them stating that, hey, I know you voted, but we didn't count it because I didn't receive my confirmation. So I need to vote again. Is that your course of action?
Well, I don't know because I've never experienced that, so
Okay. So
don't know.
yeah, so this is why we're talking and having this conversation, because there's people out there that did vote and they vote
And got purged.
provisionally. Yeah, they
Oh.
got purged,
Hmm.
and they voted. I forget the lady's name. She was a black woman. She actually was on probation. She wasn't locked up, and that's one of the things here in Ohio is if you as long as you're not locked up, you can vote. I don't think it was that way in Texas. So you have to be fully off of out of jail and
Yeah,
fully off the
parole and
probation,
everything. Yeah, that's the
parole,
way I
everything, right?
understand it in Texas. Yeah.
Now,
And
now, could you explain? Because we talked about this yesterday. For those that are in the comments, and for those who might listen to it again, I'm not sure if you touched on it. Could you explain to the people the provisional ballot? How does that work if you're at a voting poll and something comes up and you have to request for a provisional ballot?
right. So I'll just read what I found on the provisional ballot for Texas, because that's what I was talking about, right? So in Texas, from start to finish, you gotta you go in and you try to get find your name on the voter roll. Your name isn't on there, so you can have a couple of issues that you could be at the wrong voting precinct. Like, what I mean by that is, so say you're at a high school in the gymnasium and they have four different tables, and you say, hey, I came here before and I voted at this table, the one in the right corner of the gym, right? And they said, we don't have your name here. And the line is long, right? The hundreds of people on all four tables are long. And they say, well, you're at the wrong voting precinct, I guess. I don't know. But I don't see your name on here. So at that point, they ask you some questions. They want to see your ID. They want to see where your address. Did you move in the last year or two? Is your address still the same? And you start answering all these questions that they got. And then at that point, they give you, if once you pass all their questions, they give you a provisional ballot to let you vote. Now, what they do with that ballot is they basically set it to the side until the end of the election, and then they go through it and see, was this person really a registered voter, and all those things that I put on the screen there. Uh, he's not a felon. He's not this. He's not that. He was registered to vote. He was just at the wrong table. Then they go ahead and they count your vote. So I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but that's what that's what I see the ballot being, a provisional ballot, meaning they'll count it once they check you.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think the way that we can just alleviate this stuff on a regular basis is to constantly stay involved, constantly vote, constantly check. When you go to get your license, especially renewed, I wouldn't be getting a new license, getting it renewed. You get asked these questions: do you want to be a voter? And I think for so long, or at least here in my state, but I think for so long, so many people kind of just they look at that and just keep it moving, right? Because we're all so busy throughout the day. But there is a way that you can always check your voter status, and we got to be doing it. If you're an involved voter, then you should already know your voter status because you're voting all the time. But when you
Right.
want to wait till that one big election, and now you want to cry foul that hey, my voter registration has been revoked, it just creates chaos, and we see this every year. And of course, there's always those same states that run into this issue, and I get it from a political standpoint. If I want my party to win, then if I can purge votes, I'm going to purge votes. If I want my party to win, then I'm going to constantly make sure that my voter registration is valid. And I don't think people realize, of course, every year, and I've been voting since the 90s. So every year, every election is important. This is this fear tactic, in which all of them are. But every year, you got more and more people not getting involved. That's the biggest problem. Let me mute myself real quick. I'm at the store.
Okay. But but yeah, that's essentially what a provisional ballot is. It should be offered to you during the early voting and on the election day if they can't find your name. It should be offered to you. Uh, I don't know if they do, but they have rules and regulations and code requirements. You know that they have to have those things available to you because we are human. We all make mistakes. You could have the same last name with just like an apostrophe or something like that as a guy who got purged and they purged you, right? So you got to make sure that you have some type of remedy ready to go in the event that uh, they don't they don't what's the name of you allow you to vote. So you would have to what's the name of make sure that hey, I'm registered to vote. I'm ready to go. So
Sorry
yeah,
about that. I had a
no, you
very
good.
important phone call from my wife wanting to know where her breakfast was at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But but that's essentially what a provisional ballot does. It's there for backup. You know,
hmm In case
because
something goes
yeah,
awry with, you know what I mean,
yeah,
with the status
hmm
quo, so to speak, right?
right.
hmm
So I think with them purging that many people over that course of time, I think that they should have a whole list of provisional ballots ready to go because people are going to get there and they're going to be like, "Hey, man, y'all took my name off." You know, well, no, we took out John Smith. Well, I'm John Smith, but I'm a John Smith that live at 123 Broadway. Well, you never responded back to us when we sent you a notice. Well, I never received a notice, right? Because 123 Broadway is underneath the bridge downtown. It's a homeless camp. Well, did it get it delivered there? Well, I don't know. The mailman never seen nothing like that. It didn't have a mailbox at that address. So when things like that happen, those are the things um, that you need to be talking about before those things happen. Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate you stopping through, K Jose.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and but I just I just got to keep going back, at least in my mind, with the same thing of, hey, look, man, there is no excuse for you not to be involved. So there's no excuse for you to find out in the fourth quarter that your voter registration has been denied, or your voter registration is up in limbo. There's just no excuse. And I think that's where the biggest problem is. You know what that saying, you know, don't hate the player, hate the game. And that goes through life in a lot of different things, because it is a game that politicians in these states are playing with people's vote. And unless you're willing to get involved and go with a full court press, some of those that love basketball will understand what I'm saying, then you're deserving, in my opinion, at this point, what you're getting, because you're not willing to actually stay on top of what you need to do for that vote. And I don't think if people went back and read the 1965 Voters' Right Act, they will understand in detail a little bit more, because basically where we're at in 2024 based on that act, then hey, they can't just disqualify you for race, but they can do other things to disqualify your vote. So at this point, you can't just say, well, it's because it's this demographic, this is why they're doing it. In hindsight, yes. But when you look at the way that they're doing it, no, they're following within the laws of the 1965 Voters' Right Act. We're just not doing the basics to make sure that it's
Right.
active for us to vote. That's where the biggest problem is. You know,
Right.
we see this in us, you know, we're old enough where we've seen this every 4 years. You know, certain states, they have to go, they get challenged by the Supreme Court. And this goes all the way up until the day of voting. And after, they're still getting challenged. So you got to ask yourself, like DB said earlier, when somebody said your vote don't matter. Well, if it didn't matter, why did they spend these resources? Why did they take this much time
Hmm.
every year or every 4 years to push people off the voter rolls?
Right.
You know, and I get it, when we're in a state like Texas, someone say 1 million people not voting is not a lot, but hey, listen, there's been times in this world where elections have been lost by one vote. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's got, you know, it's got to be something really important for them to go out of their way to make sure you can't participate
Well,
in the
yeah,
voting
it's
process.
been the work since 2020. That's the caveat to this.
Hmm.
They just didn't wake up overnight and have him sign that. The governor sign that. It's been in the works
Correct.
since 2020.
Well,
So
I look at
it
it
was the third
past
time.
2020.
It was the
Hmm.
third time that the Republicans tried to push that through, and the Democrats, they had their tactics and how to hold up bills and stuff like that. So there was the third time. So once that went through, you know, then it was off to the races at that point. But to bring up DB's scenario where he loves the mail-in ballot, and I asked him, if he never got the confirmation email on the other end, what would he do? He said, I don't know. It never happened to me before. So in reading the provisional ballot rules for Texas, and obviously he doesn't live in Texas, so but this is something he can think about and go research his provisional ballot in his state, because in Texas, uh, if you don't get the mail-in confirmation in Texas, then basically what you would do is you would go to the polling place, and then what you would do is you would uh, you would let them know I got to cancel my mail-in ballot application, right? Because you voted and then they never got it, and you can't vote twice. So what you would do is you would say, "Hey, I need a cancel my mail-in ballot application," and when you cancel that, then you can go vote. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes
Okay,
sense. But what it does,
because
it delays the process, though. You know what I
well,
mean?
but it's a solution to that. Some
Hmm.
other states do the same thing. They get that confirmation, right?
Correct. Correct.
I haven't done that. I always go, but um, not
Yeah, I'm
not
one of
getting
those.
that
I physically
confirmation.
walk in.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
always go, but knowing that would be what I would look up now, your procedure for canceling that ballot. Because once you cancel it, then you can vote manually again. You know what I'm saying? Because you've already voted and you didn't get your confirmation. And when you went in to check, you know, I don't know, I ain't seen it. I don't know where that. Well, just give me my cancellation of a ballot application, and then I could cancel that mail-in ballot, and then I can just go ahead and vote again while I'm here.
Correct.
But
But see, I think that, and of course we've seen this before, right? This is not Texas is the one that's been in the news lately, but 4 years before it was another state, and 4 years before it was another state. We
right,
can all remember the election of George Bush Jr. when they had those butterfly ballots in Florida, right? And
yeah,
most
the
states,
hanging
when they
chad.
changed it,
Mhm,
yeah, there you go. When they
mhm,
changed their ballots, actually put it out, right? Everything's on a website, so you get to see it, but people aren't looking to see what's going on. And once they walk into the voting booth, now they're in a situation where, oh man, what is this? Or they tricked us. Well, yes and no. You know, they told you what they was going to do, you just wasn't paying attention. And I think this is where we're dropping the ball. I always say, politics is local. I'm more concerned about what my local mayor is doing, my governor is doing, because that's who can affect me right now today. Senate, House, the President, Supreme Court, they're on the list, but that's what's more important. And if you're not even focusing on that state election and your local municipality election, just jumping in for the presidential election, this is when we get caught and we find out, oh, I've been purged. Like I said, several years ago, state of Virginia was doing that, and they was going by names. If there was a
mhm.
Marquez, last name Marquez, first name Jose, guess what? If they found two people with the same name, they purge them,
Right.
and then they would figure it out later. Well, by the time they figured out, guess what? The election's over. Your
The
vote didn't
election's over
count.
with.
There you go.
Mhm.
Your vote didn't count. So, we've got to stay ready, um, especially political. And I get it. Politics is not sexy at all. It is actually boring. It can be frustrating, because you see the game that's being played, but we just got to stay involved. Not staying involved. The old saying, being politically astute. It has a lot of meaning to it, and I think that we've involved ourselves with so much stuff to the point where majority of people wouldn't know who they're voting for if they had to go in there and vote right now for their state representative, just to be represented inside the state. What party will represent you. A lot of people don't even understand who their senator are, who their house members are. And this is where the problem is, because if you know these things, then that means you are involved and active voter. But not knowing these things, you're only hurting yourself. So whatever direction you want the country to go, if you're not involved, the country's not going in that direction. I don't care what you
Right.
do, it's not
Mhm.
going, because every vote counts. There was such a hard fight to get us where we're at now, being able to vote, especially in the Black community, but not so much the
Mhm.
Black community, just communities as a whole. Because there are people who want to go back to the early or late or early 1700s, where you could only vote if you had property. So there are people who are still pushing that narrative, and that's a great way to disenfranchise voters. If you don't have property, you can't vote. If you don't own this, you can't vote. And listen, I feel voting should be a right, but a law. It should be mandated. We should have voter holidays where, hey, there's a national day that we all take off for work and we all go and vote. You should have to participate in the country that you live in and the decisions that are being made. And a
But how
lot of
many
us,
times do people not participate in jury duty? Right. So that would be another testament on how they trying to get out here and purge you. If you don't respond to a jury duty notice, they're going to take you off. Mhm.
Oh, that's
they're
true.
gonna they're gonna take you off because you didn't respond because you're saying to yourself, "Hey, man, I don't want to have nothing to do with the court system. I don't want to go down there." And if you don't respond, they're gonna say, "Well, we're taking you off,"
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
still gonna come after you for jury duty because you're supposed to respond, but they're gonna take you off that voting role right then and there.
No, that's true. And you know how it was when we were younger. There was some, man, I got warrants. They ain't going. And you're like, man, you ain't got no warrants. What are you talking about? And I get it. You know, you may not want to do jury duty, but here's the thing about when people say they don't want to do jury duty, but then they go and they hear about a court case. Like, man, this is ridiculous. How could they let this guy walk after all that he did? Well, guess what? You didn't want to participate in the jury, so
Right.
they got somebody else, and they seen it a totally different way. That's why I
Mhm.
say we got to get involved. You know, and I can't stress it enough. And people have been saying it for years, since Friday After Freedom. It's so important to get involved. And at this point, you got to ask yourself, those that don't want to get involved, only want to jump up and holler when there is a presidential election, and they still don't even get involved.
Mhm.
You have people that spend more time trying to coerce you to vote a different way, and not even give you a reason why you should vote a different way. We
Mhm.
hear it all the time. The old sayings where you're on the plantation, but yet they won't give you a reason why you should vote a different way. Well, I will give everybody this reason: just vote, because
Yeah.
one of the days you'll wake up and you're looking at a total different country because you didn't vote. And I
Right.
think it's so important that we're actively voters. We're voting for everything. Like I said, if you vote on dog catcher, vote. you know um, there was a
Well,
town in go ahead. Mhm.
I was just gonna say it's just they're making you now have to have an ID to go vote, right? And we know homeless people usually don't have IDs. They don't have the
Correct.
money to afford one, right?
Correct.
That shouldn't be
Well,
a reason why you stop them from voting.
that's true. I know, like in the state of Texas, this was about 8 years ago, I believe, and they were basically they used to allow college students to vote, right? Because they say, hey, listen, you're in the state over 6 months over the year. This is your registered state while you're here. And they decided, okay, you can't use your college ID, but you can use your gun license to vote. It's stuff like that they put in play that disenfranchise voters. Now, I'm a firm believer: if I'm paying taxes in this state, I don't care what kind of taxes, and I'm living there an average of 6 months out of the year, yeah, I want to be able to vote.
Well, it shouldn't
I
even
want to
have
be.
anything to do if you're paying taxes or not. You're a
Hmm.
citizen. You're a citizen of the United States, and that's part of the 15th Amendment, right? That's why I specifically put that in there, is because you're a citizen first, so that allows you to vote,
Correct.
right? So it shouldn't be about you pay X amount of dollars in taxes, or it shouldn't have anything to do with none of that. You're exercising your right,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's all.
But
That's all it should be.
but here's the thing: though. People will challenge your natural born citizenship.
They
I
can't
I don't
challenge
think.
it. It doesn't
Well,
say
yeah.
natural born citizenship. It says citizen.
Well,
It doesn't say natural
it's
born. I
correct.
specifically put quotes in there for it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I
Yeah.
specifically put quotes in there,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. So, like I said, it's one of those where I'm just gonna stand on my soapbox. Listen, stay ready, get ready. You know, that's just it. Because um, I think everything is moving so fast in this country now, a lot faster than it normally has, at least to me. And
Mhm.
these politicians, regardless of what side of the aisle you on, at the end of the day, they're there to represent you. Now, of course, we understand big money plays a big part, so you're not going to get the whole pie. But if you're not even participating in the voting system, you're not even going to get none of the pie. So the minimal thing you can do is just participate. I don't see why uh, we
I
make
just
this
told
so
you.
hard for ourselves.
It, I just told you that some people don't want to participate, and that's fine. So when they do get ready to participate, they should be able to. It shouldn't
Y-
be you got to participate every other year or every 2 years. If not, we're going to take your name off of that. It shouldn't be that. You're on
Well,
there
I
forever.
think it should be. I think it should be. You know why? And here's why I think it should be. Because one, whenever there is a rule change, let's just start at the local level. You're affected by it, one way, shape, or form, right? And if this is something that was put on a ballot and it had to be voted on, and you didn't participate, then now you're affected by it. You have no idea what's going on.
Mhm.
Why did the change happen? The law that they just implement. So I think you should be doing it. I don't think anybody should sit out any election. I know the older I
Yeah,
get, the more I try to
I agree, but
participate in everything.
there's people
Hmm.
that's gonna say, I don't feel like voting right now. They might have things going
Yeah,
on. They might not be in a space to vote right now. But it
correct.
should be
And
available
those,
to them at all
yeah,
times.
and you know what? I don't disagree with that, but I will say this: those will be the ones back picking cotton. And I said it. They'll be back picking cotton. you know,
That's why I
because
got them.
uh,
They don't pick
y-
cotton no more. These people wear silk. I ain't never seen nobody
yeah,
wearing cotton t-shirts. I was wearing silk pajama bottoms and bonnets and silk
well,
everything.
they'll be picking up worms. How about that? They'll be picking silkworms. They're gonna be picking something. You see what I'm saying? Something is about to get picked. But like I
Mhm.
said, man, it's one of those where I'm just a firm believer, man. You got to stay involved. You got to know what your state is doing, because what Texas has just done is nothing new. These states have been doing it for years.
Right. These states have been doing this for a while.
These states think it's new. It's out. But by the time you do it, it's too to do anything. Now you still got time, but now you got to challenge the state, right? And we saw this several years ago with Arkansas, where a lot of the people in Little Rock, they purged their votes, and they said, "Well, we'll deal with this after the election." And I'm only wondering, not only I'm wondering if they ever actually fixed that problem for those people who were not able to vote. Because and we're only talking like 100,000 people, but 100,000 people in a city like Little Rock, that can sway an election
Oh,
real
definitely.
quick. You see,
Definitely.
so I think that's what I say. They I understand the game and how they do and why they do it. I understand it. You know, and I'm not gonna say, well, I'm not mad at them. Yeah, I'm mad at them because you're cheating. You're taking people's rights. You know, and you're finding ways to circumvent the law to take people's rights. That's the problem that I have with it. But I will say this: more people, excuse me, more people now are actually basing themselves allowing them to take their right. That's
Right.
how I see that. Because us not being involved as a voting class, it, it's just damaging. you know, because we got people that just refuse to participate, and they will give you every reason why. Oh, it don't matter. Well, it matters. It matters. The problem is they don't understand what's important to them. So they rather
Mhm.
say, well, voting don't matter to discourage you. But if you ask them, well, hey, man, let me, and we've had these talks, we've done this over and over where we've actually stated what was important to us, and why we vote. But we've asked other people, and they don't really know why they vote. They don't understand what's important to them. Most people feel, hey, if my life is fine, why should I worry about it. I get it. But what happens during the day where your life is no longer fine?
Right.
The older we get, you know, the more involved we become because we start to see certain things that are changing, and we're like, hold up, man, this is going to change my money. This is going to change the way that I can get my health care done. And at a certain point, that becomes the most important thing to most people anyway. I will say it that way. I know to me is very important. Healthcare and my money, the ability for me to take care of myself, and even that is important when it comes to voting. Whether um, you're allowed to be not in a right to work state when the states want to call themselves right to work state. Um, you know, those kind of things, whether states are pushing against the way the unions are being brought in. These are things that everyday Americans deal with. Not all Americans are union, but we all have to get up and go to work some way, shape, or form. And by doing that, well, I'm one of those where I want to vote on somebody who's strict on labor laws. That's what's important to me. I don't need you to be relaxed on labor laws because now companies are able to do whatever they want to do and you have no rights. They're able to basically bring anybody in or fire you with will, and you have no rights. These are things that are important to me. So these are some of the ways of how I vote and what I look for in a candidate that's running for public office. So I think, we all have our own pet peeve, what we like, what we don't like. But at the end of the day, without sounding like a broken record, we just got to stay involved.
Yeah.
you know, that's just it. We just got to stay involved and get involved and keep this thing moving, man. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun. I've said that before, but I have to keep saying it because what we're seeing right now, this is nothing new. This is not the
Right.
first time that Texas has done this. This is not going to be the first time. You're going to hear another state coming up here shortly that's doing the same thing. And they do it every year. It's
Right.
just that they understand more people are involved during the presidential election. But after that, they don't go to the midterms, which I think is just as
Right.
important, way more important than the presidential election. It's the
Mhm.
midterms. So when we do that, we just drop the ball, especially if those that vote democratically, we've seen over and over, they turn out for the presidential election, but when it comes to midterms, the numbers drops. You know,
Right.
you can't
But it
have.
still would get
Mhm.
disenfranchised from looking at the laws the way they have it set up now is every 2 years they're doing examination. So they put out a random send cards out to see if you respond back. If you don't respond back, they go ahead and go ahead and remove you from the voter roll. You
Mm,
can't. I'm saying you can't do that because some of these people signed up at a homeless camp, right? So
correct.
there's an address there, but there's no mailbox. So when you send that out for an examination at that address, you should say, "Oh, it's a homeless camp. I can't send it there." But you send it there knowing that it's a homeless camp and there's no address, mailbox. The
Correct.
address is there, but there's no mailbox. So what does the mailman do? The mailman returns it. It says undeliverable. That's all he puts on there. It's undeliverable. Well, what do you mean it's
Hmm.
undeliverable? Well, he didn't say it was a homeless camp.
That's
You see
true.
what I'm saying? So he says
Hmm.
he sent it back. They say undeliverable. So they take that as, uh, hey, we couldn't deliver it, so we're gonna go ahead and just remove them from the rolls. And there could
Yeah.
be hundreds of people there. You know what I'm saying? It could be 100 people there, and they say we couldn't deliver 123 Broadway Street underneath the bridge. It was undeliverable. They just sent them all back.
Mm,
You see what I'm saying? So that's one of the ways. That's why I had issue with you got to have the facts, the data to say, okay, you're gonna remove these people. Let's see who you removed. Let's just see who you removed. That's why I sent you the map, and I said in these areas, this was a heavy Democratic area. In Houston is a heavy Democratic area, but they have
hmm.
Republicans in the House in that run those districts, right? So the
Correct.
Republican running that district, it's a Democratic district, but the Republicans run it. And people there that don't understand that. They don't understand that they need to have some people in there fighting for their interests because their interest is to be able to vote,
Correct.
right? And they're telling you can't. They're saying, "Hey, uh, we want to stop illegals from voting." How are you stopping illegals from voting? You're legally, if you're a citizen, that's how you become eligible to vote.
Correct. And listen, the whole stop illegals from voting, that's just a tactic, right? I think we all know that's just a tactic of what they use. It sounds good, but they've never been able to prove when we had illegals voting, right? But it just sounds good, and nobody's ever been able to prove that. Now,
But
I
that's what he
remember.
said. They quoted
Mhm.
him for saying that because when he signed it into law, that's what he said. That was his reasoning for doing it. But me and you both know that he signed it because his party wanted him to sign that
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they tried to push it through two more times before that, and it never made it to him.
correct, correct. And this is why, you know when we look at what these states are doing, they only do it in the time when the elections are so close, when they start to see there's a influx of new voters being registered. That's when they pull out all the tricks, right? um there was a oh man, I wish I could think of this guy's name. He said it back in 1978 when Carter was in office, Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter. And he talked about, he says, elections are not won by people who vote. Elections are won by people who don't vote. So in other words, he understood, if we can keep the voting populace low, we know we will always win. You see what I'm saying? And how do we do that? We purge voters. We discourage people to vote. Of course, we had the Voters' Right Act to really kind of nip that in the bud based on race. But we still have problems where people are discouraged not to vote, i.e., several states, you can't give people water. They're standing in line. I mean, that can cause problems. They started making it felonies when you're trying to register people to vote, like through the ACLU. They was making it felonies if they wasn't turning in the votes that day, the people named that day that they was setting up the vote, right? So it used to be, you go through the course and you have team members in different neighborhoods, and the end of the week, okay, we put everybody in the system, we make sure, nope, they wanted it done that day. So if you wasn't doing it that way, it could be a felony. So they was finding all kind of ways to discourage people from voting. And if you discourage them, then guess what? You keep the voting populace low. And that system has always worked. So whenever we see there's a purge like we're seeing in the state of Texas, and Virginia did it the other year, uh, I think it's solely because they're seeing the influx of new voters and trying to keep the numbers the same no matter what. Because, like you said, you showed us yesterday who voted in what area in the state of Texas and how much did it change. It really didn't change that much. You know what I mean? But when you can actually lower the amount of people that are voting, well, hey, that's a big change.
That's a
Just
real
but
big change,
yeah, yeah,
right?
just even though
Making
they're right there. Hmm.
You're making it harder for the poll workers to go out there and register people, because new people, because they got to go out there and register the old people first, and then get the new people on board. So
Correct.
you're giving them more work versus them going out, says, hey, I need to register this person. Now I gotta re-register somebody who already was registered, and for whatever reason they got removed from the voter roll, and now you got to do that all over again, and then you got to make sure you register new people to come in and get ready to vote. So they're trying to give you an extra workload. That's what they're trying to do, and
Correct. Correct.
you got to be
Yeah,
ready for it.
yeah, and it's a way to just disencourage people. Um, when they do these kind of tactics. But you know, it happens every year, but it happens on a bigger scale every presidential election, right? And at this point, all I could say to people is, and this is Theo's opinion, is listen, if you don't vote for it, you don't deserve it. The old way, you got to work hard. You don't deserve, you don't work hard for it. Well, if you don't want to vote for it, you don't deserve what comes with the laws that are being put in play that could benefit you. Now that's how I see it, right? Because as a society, we still have to be responsible for ourselves. We can't just expect to send somebody uh, to government and expect them to solve all the problems when they're not even they're there, but they're not representing anything that we want done. We still, even though we vote, we have to make our politicians do their job, and I think that's a big problem, right? 3 or 4 times out of the year, politicians, they all come home, they have these meetings, and they listen to their constituents. Well, let's be honest, the average person, when we see these videos, there's maybe 30 people in the room,
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
in a district with over 50,000 people, but you got 30 people in the room. you know
Right.
as a
And the
politician.
districts are in Texas, the districts are all over the place.
Correct.
Like they would have somebody, one person in charge of a district, and they would have like 5 areas inside of Texas that they would, one way over by El Paso, another all the way down south, another one in the middle by Austin. It was like, wow, like they didn't have nobody to represent them in, where they lived at, because they had like 100 and something representatives. So
and,
they
and that
it's crazy.
and that's how that state, that's how they do it. That's how they draw their lines for their elections, and where you can go. But people have to know it, right? It
Mhm.
on one hand, I can say that it doesn't make sense that you or I would know about the state of Texas, or I shouldn't know about the state of Pennsylvania, right? Because I don't live there. I have to be involved in the state of Connecticut, but because of, we know how it goes. When one state does it, another one falls in play, right? That's the big hysteria about California. Whatever California do, then everybody else is going to do. Somewhat true, somewhat not true, but we still got to be involved in our own state. Like when we was talking yesterday and we was discussing this, I was looking up. Um, Voter registration, early voter registration in
Mhm.
the city of Meriden, where I live at, and it's right there at the courthouse, right off Main Street. If you want to do early voting, it's right there. Now, where I go to vote is right off of Plains Road,
Mhm.
about like 2 miles from my house. That's where I would go to vote, unless they moved it. But I know they didn't, because we just had a election 2 months ago for mayor. So that was just done. So, but of course, every state is different. Some states have more relaxed voter laws, but you have to look at the states, the Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, the Arkansas. These are states that just about every time there's a presidential election, somebody has to go to court to fight for your vote.
Yeah.
So you see
And
what I'm saying?
they're at it every 4 years. They're going to be doing that. They're going
Correct,
to be doing that. Mhm.
correct. And the only way to stop that is for people to constantly get involved. It's like, look at it this way, from a football analogy, if you like football. If you know right then and there they're going to run it up the middle every time, and they keep scoring, and you're not loading up that middle, and they just say we're just going to keep doing it, then you the fool.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, you
You
see
know
the
what I
play.
mean?
You know what the play gonna be. They already did it. They already ran it up the middle. That you got to get right there and load it up and stop them.
Correct, correct. You see, so it's not like we don't know or understand that this is the play every year. This is what they do for every voting cycle, which is every year. But every 4 years for the major presidency. So it's not like we don't have a general idea of what they're going to do. I think the problem is we've gotten too lazy at this point. Um, well, I'm gonna use the word lazy. I could say complacent, but I'm gonna use the word lazy. We've gotten too lazy. We don't want to get involved in politics until after everything is over, and then we will complain about the politics that's going on. But just to get involved and go vote, we won't do that, and that's a bigger issue than anything. You know, we see it all across the board, especially whether we use Chicago or New York as an example, because everybody wants to use them as hotbed states when it comes to people coming into this country from other countries. And they keep saying, well, they're giving them all this money. Well, that means that this money has been available.
Exactly.
You know what I
It's
mean?
it's earmarked for that reason
They're,
only. They
they're
just don't give money unless it's earmarked for it, right? So
correct.
if they gave money to somebody, it was earmarked, meaning that they took it and they had it set aside for a specific purpose. They just
Hmm.
don't say, we got to give X amount of dollars to these people, and then you got to know where that money's coming from
That's right.
and where it's
That's right.
going, right?
And,
So
and,
that
and the,
money's already there.
yeah, and the fact that the money is being dispersed the way that it was is like, okay, well, you guys been living here X number of years. You see that there is money for things that you need to do and things that you want. Then now you just got to fight a little harder to get it. You can't say there's no money. You see the money is there. You know,
Right.
it goes back to uh, who you're voting for. Why are you voting for this person? You know, the old way we was taught in school. I don't know what they're taught now. I'm no longer in school, but the who, what, when, and why still goes on to the day, right? There
Mhm.
was always that question: the who, what, when, and why. You know, and I think people have forgotten about that. You know, the basic stuff still works. If they don't think it don't work, then why are they finding ways to pull people off the voting rolls? You know, which is basic. Oh, well, you haven't voted in 4 years. You're out of here. You know, oh, you know what? We sent something out. We didn't get it back. You know, maybe the person was out of town that week. You see what I'm saying? They could have been out the country during the time they sent these letters out, making sure that you're still there. You're still a registered voter. You know, and like I said, just about everybody gets their license renewed every 4 years. Why not
Right.
make sure that your voter registration is up to date? It is set up for the correct address. If there's a
Mhm.
signature, make sure the signature is correct because
Right, but that's
some
just
states,
part of it.
yeah,
I get it.
yeah,
You have to check that at least, and then that provisional ballot is a backup. You know what I mean?
correct,
For if something is awry or something ain't going the way it's supposed to be, or the machine is down or something, there's always going to be issues because we're
hmm,
human, right? The somebody just got in trouble for running out of paper at one of the polling places, right? And all he did was he had I think he had a second job making like 200 some $1,000, and he was making like 80 or 90 working there.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
found out that he wasn't doing the right thing because all he did was just take all his precincts that he was in charge of and divide that by how much paper he had and sent out the paper and not understanding that each precinct had more people than some of the other precincts.
correct. And here's the thing: we see that playbook every year, right? Every
Mhm.
year when there's a big election, we see the playbook, and it's always a woman that comes on. Nothing against women. And oh well, we will do better next time. We didn't know. Well, people are standing in line 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours to vote. And every time, oh, we're going to do better. We ran out of ballots. You know your county's population, right?
Right.
And they know that. But these are the tricks that they do, and it's there to simply to disencourage the voter.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
disenfranchise you, yeah.
There you
And
go,
so, yeah,
disenfranchise.
those things should be illegal, and like I said, the the Supreme Court should have already addressed all of this for every state because the 15th Amendment said it right there,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to talk about. I appreciate you coming in. We're at over an hour and 30 minutes. I didn't want to keep
Mm,
this going that long. I mean, we still have conversations
oh
on
yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but this is just for the listener audience. Get down the road to actually think about, getting involved and checking your registration, wherever
Hmm.
you live at, and making sure that you're able to vote for this upcoming election and any election after that.
Yeah. Well,
Stand
there
ready.
you go. Yeah. I mean, it's not just this one election, and we said it before that this is what really gets a lot of people, in my opinion, messed up because they focus on this one election and then they become an ostrich. Their head is in the sand. They're no longer worried about anything and not understanding. Well, this was just one part of your right to vote, just one part. You got other parts, and we got to always make sure we're covering all parts of voting. Until we do that, then we're going to be right where we're at right now. And I get it. Some of the state officials will say, well, hey, we got to make sure that this person is legally allowed to vote. I ain't knocking that. But at the same time, the citizens got to make sure that their vote counts.
Right.
So as a citizen, you should make sure your vote counts. And a politician's job is to try to figure out how to make your vote not count. You see how
Right.
you see how that works.
Their
Everybody has a
job
role
should
to
be
play.
making sure that these citizens have the right to vote. They shouldn't even be
It's
worried about if this person is going to vote for me or not. Just making sure that the citizens have the right to vote and should be always maintained because it's part of an amendment, right? It's no difference than these people making sure they got the right to carry and bear arms, right?
correct.
you you're going to go out here and you got the right to carry and bear arms and you keep yelling the second amendment. There's more amendments than just the second one, so you got to
Well,
make sure that all of the amendments, because if the second one is important, the 15th one is important
correct.
because it's an
Correct.
amendment.
Yeah. And one thing I've learned when people, a lot of times when they harp on that Second Amendment, man, they truly don't understand it. No one reads the whole thing in its full context. And of course, the Supreme Court's then changed some laws with the Second Amendment. So basically, he said, yeah, everybody has a right to have a gun. But the problem is, even though the Supreme Court did that a couple of years ago, there's a part of that Second Amendment they need to take out because it doesn't reflect the times, right? And when you say for well-regulated militia, well, that wasn't speaking for everybody having a gun. That was for what it was, a militia. And we're not at that point in this country anymore where we're called militias. Well, we have the police department, military. Those are militias. They're regulated. So, but we know that as a citizen, if I don't have a felony or I haven't done, I'm not on any psychiatric drugs, that I can have a gun. So that amendment is actually outdated. Like a lot of the laws that are in the Constitution and amendments that they're made, they don't stand the test of time at this point. And we're still, and I think that's one of the biggest problems with this country. We're running on laws that are outdated, and we're still trying to implement these same outdated laws. You know,
Right.
uh, like there is a group that wants to try to use the Dred Scott case to go against Vice President Kamala Harris. I mean, and that's Dred Scott case has been over, it's been done, laws has been rewritten since that time, but they're still wanting to use that law because those laws, even though these amendments are made to the Constitution, a lot of things are still on the books that were on the books back in the 17 and 1800s. They're still there.
Mhm.
It's just that, okay, well, this amendment kind of overrides that, but this is why there's so many challenges when it comes to voting, why they're always in the court because they keep going back to the original laws of who's able to vote, why they're able to vote, and when they're able to vote. You know, that whole who, what, when, and why. You
There you
see what
go.
I'm saying? This is what they do. And here's the thing. I understand the tactic, the game. I get it. But I want us as a people to understand the tactics and be ready for it when it comes. Because
Mhm.
that's where the problem is. Nobody is ever ready for when things come down the pipe. And before you know it, they're stuffing food down your throat that you have no taste for, that is not healthy for you at all, no beneficial, and there's nothing you can do. They're just shoving it down your throat, you
Right.
know. So that's where we're at. But I'm gonna jump off. My
Yeah, I'm about
brother,
to
it's
end
been
it.
good
Yeah.
talking with you. I know DB was on for a little while, so and I believe he's going live today. So I'm gonna try to
I think it's
watch
6
that.
p.m.
Yeah, I should be home to watch that, and I'm gonna try to go ahead and get my day started. Um, and we're gonna have a little rain, so that means I'm definitely not gonna work hard today. So I'm gonna go ahead and go get in the truck and go up the street, get some coffee. Then I'm gonna go sleep for 30 minutes, and then we're gonna start working. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
hey, you got to do what you got to do for Mr. Charlie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
'Cause
there you go.
without
This
him, there won't be no us. You know what I
There
mean?
you go. There you go. This is what Mr. Charlie makes me do. You know what I'm saying? He always say, if you're tired, Theo, just take a nap. We don't want you driving tired. Hey, you got to tell me, but one time I was going
Right.
to sleep anyway. So,
Yeah, you don't want you making no mistakes, man. That's a costly mistake to
oh
the
yeah,
type of job you do. You know, so you
yeah.
definitely don't want to
There,
make no mistakes.
there's
Stay in traffic.
correct. Yeah, DB put the Constitution needs to be updated to current times. He's correct. It does. You know, so
Uh,
this is where we at. But like I said, I'm gonna jump off, my brother. And we'll do it again. Maybe I'll catch you in the live today or down in the comments later on today.
all right. I
All right, brother.
appreciate it.
No
Thanks
problem.
for
Yep,
coming
yep,
through.
mhm. Yep.
So there you have it, people. We talked about this voting purge. It just don't happen in Texas. It's been going on for years in that state, in other states, and you got to be ready for it. If you're not ready for it, then you're going to be disenfranchised. And I'm just using my platform to just come out here and tell people check your registration status now. Make sure that you're registered to go vote. If you're not registered, go register to vote right now and update everything. If you moved, if you changed license addresses or anything like that, go register to vote, re-register, make sure you're good to go so that when it's time to go vote, you can go and vote. You won't have no issues. You won't have to sit there and get questions 100 times about a provisional ballot or whatever else they may do. You're ready to vote. Cast your vote and keep it pushing. So that's all I wanted to say. I'll come back with another video and stay tuned. Comment, like, and subscribe.